Are you struggling to understand how to rebuild trust in your relationship, especially after compulsive lying and cheating? Then please stick around because in this video, I'm going to discuss these two crucial skills that you have to have if you want any chance of repairing and reconciling your relationship. And if you're ready to transform your relationship and build that lasting connection, then please hit the subscribe button now and hit the bell notification to be notified when I post new videos each week. In case we haven't met, I'm Dr. Luke, and I help men and women in long-term relationships learn how to heal and reconcile after infidelity and separation. And what I discuss on this channel goes much deeper beyond that surface level bullcrap of just communication that most coaches won't really tell you the truth. And the first skill is learning how to lead conversations for understanding. Notice how I said not just communication. You have a proper steps and framework to be able to process and go through to be able to get to know what is really the root core again. You're going to be able to communicate again properly to understand the emotional level and the understanding of not only yourself but your partner. And that really starts with being able to acknowledge difficult truths without justifying or clarification, because that's often where the argument and the communication breakdown begins. Because we say, yeah, well, but I did because of this, or because you did this. So we're trying to justify our actions, our inappropriate behavior based off of this or because of what something they did. And that's what's really called the blame game and starts to trigger each person into becoming defensive. Because by understanding this aspect alone, you can really guide a conversation or communication to a point that is calm and you can further discuss what is going on without having this raging, screaming fight. So if you want an example on how this really helps you lead conversations when you don't justify and become defensive, I want you to think of this example. So if you're having a conversation with someone and you're really angry, as mad as you've ever been, and you're screaming in their face, and they don't react though. They don't scream back at you. They don't start calling you names and start to justify why you're acting that way or why they did whatever they did. Instead, they remain calm and whole in themselves and are emotionally regulated. They're like, you know, I really appreciate you feeling comfortable to open up and tell me that. I can see how much this really hurts you and how much it really means to you. That if you're open to it, can we dig a little bit deeper on what is the root issue that is kind of really bothering you so I can understand and make sure I don't make that same mistake again. So if someone responded to you that way, what's the likelihood you're going to continue to yell and scream in their face? Probably zero or none, because we only respond to our external environment. And this is called the fundamental attribution error, or FE bias in social psychology. And I'll discuss that more later on in other videos, but it's the basic of understanding that we have the ability to influence our external environment to really be able to not control another person, but be able to control the level of energetic expression by simply being able to control our own emotional energetic release. Because I guarantee you, if someone responds to you that way, you're going to be caught off guard and you may not even know or be able to have that conversation right now. Because we don't really like to think and dig deep into what is really causing this issue, because we don't like pain. Which that recognition alone is going to change the dynamic moving forward with that person or in that relationship. And it's okay to say, I don't know. I really am not sure, but thank you for, being understanding that I acted that way. I'm sorry. So again, it's bringing that awareness and accountability back to ourselves. And you may be thinking, well, that other person is just being weak and being a simp. No, it's not. If anything, it makes them stronger to be able to recognize when someone is hurting and they're being vulnerable to be able to express them. That they really understand that the issues between them and the other person, while they may have triggered and hurt the other person, it's ultimately some emotional baggage or trauma within that other person that is being defensively reacted, or they're trying to safeguard. So really that person is, again, stronger and has the more emotional awareness and stability to be able to have that instant awareness and recognition within someone else. Or also being able to recognize how they may have not purposely hurt someone again, but they may have contributed to someone else's pain. The easiest way to describe this is we can see a gushing wound, right? And if you bumped into it, you're obviously going to say, I'm sorry. But when it comes to the majority of almost everything or every discussion, is they are emotional wounds, which are internal and cannot be seen. So again, that depth of understanding is a heightened awareness of who you are as a person, and shows that your level of understanding and ability to really understand how to communicate in emotional wounds and be empathetic for another person makes you stronger. Because one of the worst things you can do in a conversation is to ask interrogating questions, meaning, why did you do this? Or how could you possibly do that? Or, where did you go then? Or, how could you possibly do this? Or what did you text them? Just trying to dig deep for surface level crap that really doesn't matter. What I care about is, what is the underlying root system or the emotion or trauma or motivation on why you acted that way. Because an action is only the end experience of an emotional experience or an emotional expression. So instead of extensively hyper-focusing on the physical act or the external realm, we have to be able to, again, bring it back to ask questions of, what were you feeling in those moments? What was it that you felt hurt by, or what was it that you were needing in those moments? What makes those non-interrogative is you're not trying to pinpoint them and make them look like a bad person. You're asking them better, how can I understand you? How can we further connect on an emotional, deeper level so we can find a path together to resolution? And I do want to clarify is this way of communication isn't just for relationships. This is how we should communicate externally in our everyday world with our bosses, our family, our coworkers, everyone. Because when we're able to get to that depth and ask those questions, we can then start to understand them. And this is where we go to the paraphrase clarify, meaning you'll paraphrase and say, all right, if I'm hearing you correctly, and please tell me if I'm not or if I'm wrong, but from my understanding, you did this or felt this way when this happened or when you experienced this. And I know this sounds like you're just being a record re-saying back what it is that they said. But here's what the real difference is a lot of people aren't going to necessarily just outwardly be able to identify their emotions and what the real issue is. Because if they were, they would have went back and, fixed it to begin with. Meaning, if they were aware of the weed in their garden, they would have pulled it by now. But instead, it's continuing to grow. So you have to have that deep understanding of emotional literacy to where, even if they're not able to or necessarily articulate what the real issue is, we can still go back and say, hey, I'm sorry, and I really didn't mean to hurt you, but can you help me understand what happened here? Or be able to further clarify, like, I may not fully understand how you feel, but I want to be able to further understand you. That were you hurt because of when I did this or said this, that could it have made you feel this way, or does it make you feel this way? And then that's where they're going to clarify and, start to think and be self-reflective on why are those emotions and what happened. But the key here is the way you say in the intonation, meaning our micro expressions, the look on our face, our vocal tones, our body language, because ultimately, especially partners, they know you better than anyone else. And when they know or think you're feeding them a load of crap, they're going to tell you to stop. You're not my counselor. You're not my therapist. That you don't know anything about me. And they may say this even still in the moment because they're not even aware of what they feel. But I promise you, they're going to go back and think about it. And even still, if that is the response, you can still thank them and say, hey, thank you for, at least expressing this to me. That you felt emotionally safe and comfortable to even have this conversation with me. I appreciate it. And if you want to revisit this another time, my door is always open when you're ready. You're not pushing the conversation. You're not forcing them to do anything. You're saying, hey, when you're ready, I'm here. And the reason that is so key and vital is you can never force anyone in a relationship with you. You can't force them to change. That it ultimately has to be their decision. And that first starts with communicating properly and allowing them choosing when, where, and how to communicate. And you may be thinking, well, isn't that kind of selfish on their part not to want to communicate with me ever? I mean, in certain instances and circumstances, yeah, it could be. But then this is where you have to be antithetic, where why could they be thinking that way and be feeling that way instead of just focusing on how you feel? You have to get to a point where you understand emotions so deeply that if you were in the exact same position, you would make the same choice they did too. Or again, there's the other side that we don't have to be angry and resentful, but we can also say, why would I want to waste my time and energy with someone that doesn't want to have a conversation with me? And that is a little bit of a negative way to put it. But really what I'm trying to tell you is respect yourself enough to not put yourself in negative positions and just walk away if they're not ready. That when we're able to have those full conversations and get to the end of a understanding or the root causes, only then can there start to be a resolution and possibly suggestions that you can make to maybe remedy or a better plan or path forward later on. But I do want to caution you, especially men, a lot of times situations and conversations don't always need an answer or to be fixed, because it'll make your partner feel like they're broken and that they're too stupid to be able to figure this out on their own. And I know that's not your intentions, but because men as a whole, or really most people, we're fixers. We don't want people to hurt, especially the ones we love. But really the most important thing is everyone really just wants to be understood first. And sometimes that's enough. They just need you to lend them an ear to listen to. So tell me, what are some of the situations and conversations that you're having in life, or specifically with your partner, that you're really struggling to learn how to communicate and build that further trust or that emotional safety so you can really find a path forward? Please let me know in the comments below, as I'd love to hear from you. And the second key skill that you have to learn in order to rebuild trust is learning how to find win-win situations. And these win-win situations really come from having an emotional solution, or the emotional acceptance. So when we get to a point where the conversation is wanting suggestions, or your partner or the external person is saying, do you have any ideas on this, or what do you think? This is where you respond by not making statements, because that instantly can trigger or make someone else become defensive as well, especially if you have a history with communication problems within your relationship with that person. And we do this by making suggestions and not statements. Even though they openly did ask, making a statement doesn't leave that door open for further communication or true discussion. When you're making a statement, that alone can trigger people based off their past experiences, whether it's with parents that were very firm or controlling, to where they don't feel like they have the power or to really respond and their voice isn't heard. So we always need to phrase something in a way that's a suggestion. So it's again ending in a way that you're not controlling anything, you're allowing the other person to receive what you're saying and then also reply. Because we've all been in school or in our jobs to where you ask a question and someone just tells you what to do. Where we have that controlling boss or that environment where we feel like we don't have control. Especially when it's something you don't necessarily agree with or want to communicate on, and they're just like, no, you asked me a question, so I gave you your answer. Bye. It really shuts down that emotional safety and the communication lines. That when we're addressing these communication problems, that we're really addressing toxic patterns and ways to heal and move forward. But we have to make sure that we are doing it in a way that there's a benefit for both people, not just one. So it's by being able to see both sides in all aspects that we can find the win-win solution that really can benefit everyone as a whole, that will create that win-win emotional safety. Because without that emotional safety, there's no way you can ever build trust with not just your spouse or partner, but with anyone. And this is why it's absolutely crucial that these changes start within ourselves, because we can't just do it by willpower alone. Now, we've all tried to force ourselves to do something or change something, but ultimately, if we don't want to do it, we're just going to revert back to the exact same patterns, thinking, emotional, anything. Because what we have to understand is conversations or any relationship, again, friendship, parent, doesn't matter, they're emotional connections of understanding. We can't make logical statements of, well, why didn't you just do this? Or try to speak to, well, obviously you should have done this. You can't just speak to the level of an action or the external environment of justifying. Those are too logical, and people don't listen to those. Because rebuilding trust is an emotional decision. It's not a logical external decision. Trust comes with inside. So unless you have a suggestion that could help lead you to internal healing or an internal path of growth, there's a good chance it's not going to work. But we have to be able to plant those seeds of trust to allow time for our new paradigms and our new internal changes to really not just, be able to grow, but to fully blossom into our new person or becoming self. So as you can tell, there are many different nuances and levels that we can really dive deep into when it comes to how to rebuild trust within a relationship properly. And honestly, you can't afford to keep waiting and keep repeating the same mistakes to only further deteriorate your relationship, to where I encourage you, please sign up for my free consultation for my relationship restoration program on the only 5 proven steps on how to rebuild your relationship from the ground up. So I'll leave a link in the description below so you can schedule that consultation right now. So if this video resonated with you, please subscribe to my channel, give this video a like, and leave a comment so we can walk this path of healing and rebuilding your relationship together.